Hello and welcome to the 8th edition of the Non-League Podcast. I'm joined in the studio by two very, very prestigious guests. We have Ben Robinson.
Yo.
And we have Jake Adams.
Hello.
And almost forgot to introduce myself. I'm James Noble. So we're all in relatively good moods, sort of currently, because of our respective teams' results this week in the Premier League, not non-league based. So we're going to try not to milk it too much, but we might do nonetheless. But yes, it's been a very interesting few days in non-league football, with FA Trophy games over the weekend. That slightly depleted the National League schedule, but meant it was a slightly more mixed weekend than we get in terms of the contests than we get compared to most weekends. So we'll start with the FA Trophy. Just go through the results and then get Ben and Jake's thoughts on it. So we had Leyton Orient winning 2-1 at Brackley Town. I should say this was the fourth round and winners went through to the semis. We had Telford winning 2-1 at Solihull Moors. Fylde beating Barnet 4-1 on penalties after a 0-0 draw. And Stockport County beating Maidstone United 4-1. So any particular thoughts on that? I'll come to Ben first of all. Any particular thoughts on that and the impact it could have on any of those sides' seasons overall? I suppose particularly the likes of Orient and Solihull Moors and Fylde as well, because of their position in the sort of upper echelons of the National League.
Well, I mean, sort of coming away from the actual league and focusing on the trophy, I think Telford winning and getting through, and Southport are through as well. Yeah, I mean, in a way, because obviously the semi-finals are set over two legs, you'd expect Leyton Orient and Fylde to beat Stockport and Telford, but either way, 2-1 away to Solihull Moors, a really good result. And you never know, one of them could pull out a shock, or maybe even both of them could see a Stockport-Telford final. Yeah, I think for Leyton Orient, because they can actually return to the top if they win the games in hand, but obviously their form's been a bit mismatched. They won at the weekend though, didn't they? Yeah. Well, obviously they won the FA Trophy. So I think it's a good way to bounce back for them, and if they do win the games in hand and go back top, it proves, I think, their strength, and also the fact that the teams below them, above them, slipped up, and it proves how close it was, because weeks ago we were saying Leyton Orient winning it, then it's changed to Salford, Leyton Orient, and Salford, Leyton Orient, and then all of a sudden they both slipped down. Salford went down to 5th, and then and it's still sort of going right now because they've lost 2-0 as well. But yeah, I think it's a good start for them, Leyton Orient, to really pick themselves back up again and try and overtake Wrexham and Solihull, because I think everyone sort of got a bit of a shock when Solihull went top. I think Wrexham's a bit different because I think they've been in the league for a few years now, and everyone knows they're a difficult team to play away and travel down to like Wales, which is very hard place to go. We've seen teams getting battered there before. I think it was Salford got beat. They got hammered there. I'm sure they did. It was like yeah,
it's a bit of a trip though, isn't it, down there? It is.
I think especially when you travel to those places, the travelling is quite underrated for like how much it'll tire you out. And I know obviously footballers get the best treatment nowadays, but I think it
still has an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, but equally Wrexham obviously have to travel like they did up to Gateshead, that's the longest journey in the conference.
Trip,
I know. Dover is. It's close though. I think it's close second.
Yeah, no, I've got them about to, yeah. That's probably talking, I don't know what, 7-8 hour journey for that. So
it's long.
Yeah, nice early start in any of those scenarios. But yeah, it's it does demonstrate just how sort of well contested anything at that kind of level is largely. And Jake, do you feel in these scenarios that, and I think we've touched on it in previous pods, but that cup runs can potentially aid league form because it's a bit of extra motivation for any of the players to potentially keep on putting in the performances so that they get to play in those semis and potentially final matches?
I think especially with a team like Leyton Orient, they're a side which is gifted at this level in this league. Unlike other teams, they've got a massive squad. So this cup run, it gets players rotated in and out of the squad, which you could argue it'll disrupt the flow, but I think I disagree with that point on here. I think with them having their squad rotated around in this cup run, it gets all the players playing, and if they're winning, which they are at the moment, it gets them playing well, which can only help them when going into the final third of the season. You'd hope that the cup run wouldn't hinder it, because it'd be a shame for a side to purposely hinder their cup chances just in favour of the league. It'd be nice for sides at this level to have a go at both, and we're seeing how Leyton Orient at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously often these kind of conversations are had about FA Cup compared to Premier League or whatever, and I suppose it's a reminder that a lot of teams do have the same sort of issues in terms of or how much sort of priority do they wait to sort of either of those when they're looking at kind of the fixture lists in both the cup competitions and the league competitions. So that sort of leading into the semis, they're played over 2 legs around the middle of March. So it's Orient v Telford and Fylde v Stockport. First leg's on the 16th and second leg's on the 23rd of March. Guys, how do you see those going? You'd think, looking at them, you'd probably fancy Orient and Fylde on paper, but of course cup competitions, maybe the fact it's 2 legs, you could say weights in their favour because sort of it's less of a one-off scenario. But what do you think? Do you think there's potential for an upset in any of those?
I think it's fun to fantasise over certain outcomes that these matches might have, but we've seen it in the league. Fylde and Leyton Orient are 2 of the most disciplined sides when it comes to playing sensible in these games. We've seen other teams at the top, like for example more recently in Salford, are dropping points in the league to these lower teams, but teams like Leyton Orient and Fylde aren't. They're disciplined in these matches where they're the favourites. They don't let the pressure get to them. And I think we'll see when it comes to the semi-finals, Fylde and Leyton Orient will most likely advance.
Personally, I think if there's going to be a shock, I think it'll be Fylde to go out. Because I'm thinking Leyton Orient have experience, and like you said, I think that once they start picking up momentum, they steam through, roll through teams in any sort of division, like they did at the start. And I think they lost a bit of momentum, but they'll pick that back up
Fylde against Telford.
Fylde are against Stockport. It's Orient v Telford.
You see that convinces me even more.
Orient against Telford is a certain Orient, but I don't sit.
It's never certain. They beat Solihull away.
I don't know if I see Stockport beating them.
Yeah, no, it's interestingly set up either way. So we'll know in 3 weeks' time anyway, or just over 3 weeks, who's going to be in that final at Wembley on the 19th of May, Sunday the 19th.
We could be there.
Yes, we're kind of fleetingly hoping we might be able to make it there. So yes, in exam season, but yeah, we won't talk about that. But yeah, so moving on to National League results. So as we touched on earlier, slightly depleted schedule because of the FA Trophy. But the thing that really catches the eye again is, and again you mentioned it earlier on, Ben, Salford lost again. That's 2-0 at home to Eastleigh. It's now 4 consecutive defeats for them in all competitions. I believe it's 3 consecutive defeats in the National League, and 7 without a win in all competitions. So 2019's proved tough for them, really. I mean, would you, looking at it, Ben, do you feel sort of there's a particular reason behind that? Is there something that sort of we can put a finger on in terms of fatigue? I think experience is something we've touched on previously. Yeah, so do you feel there's a reason behind that drop off, really?
I think they just haven't been able to score goals. Sorry, we're getting interrupted. What's going on?
I'll go and deal with the threat.
Go on. Yeah, I think there's been a bit of a goal drought for them at the moment. I don't think they can score, and I think it's really proven bad for them because, and I think the lack of experience has really gotten to them so far this year. You said, yeah, I'm just looking at the games and the lack of goals they've already scored. So how many games back? This is 7 games. We'll go back to so Gateshead. So since then they haven't scored more than 1 goal in the game. They scored a max of 3 goals, I think.
Yeah, it is a strange one considering they were so strong up until around there were sort of signs of maybe a few more struggles around Christmas time, I think, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's and I mean it's not the first. They're not the first team sort of be in that scenario, and they won't be the last, because at any level you get teams who start seasons really strongly and then almost hit a wall at a certain stage, and it may be that they come on strong towards the end of the season. But do you feel, Jake, now that there's a genuine chance, because you look at them in the table and they are sliding sort of quite worryingly from their perspective now. They're now down to 6th, because they easily leapfrogged them into 5th over the weekend with that victory. And you look at the teams below them. You've got Sutton in 9th on 56, Gateshead in 8th on 56, and Harrogate just above them also on 56. Is there a risk that they could drop out of the playoff places altogether, Jake, do you think?
I don't know, because we've said it before, in this league, similar to the Championship, anyone could beat anyone. And I think the sides below them will end up shooting themselves in the foot and won't be able to capitalise on Salford's poor form at the moment. Obviously, Salford are in a slump. It's basic as that, really. You can't say it any other way. Salford are in a slump. It'd be interesting to see what happened with the managerial situation. Is it
Graham
Alexander
in charge at the moment, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how much longer he stays in charge. Obviously, you could argue maybe there's some pressure of the class of '92.
I think it's a bit. I think it'd be a bit too. I think it'd be harsh if they sacked him because he's done so well in the first season.
I think it'd be harsh. He's a quality manager, but it could be one of those situations where it's like player power. I think anyway, because then we've seen it at Leicester, like playing negative football under Claude Puel, and then as soon as he goes, they get a good win over Brighton. But back in non-league, I reckon it'd be a similar change. Salford, if they got rid of Alexander, I reckon that would be a good kickstart for the form. See their fixtures coming up. They've got a couple of difficult fixtures. Home to Sutton in a couple of games' time, and then home to Solihull. So you argue that the home advantage might be there for them, but Sutton and Solihull are two formidable sides in the league, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on.
Yeah, it's set up very very intriguingly over the next few weeks for Salford and all the teams up there, really, just because of how tight it is, and as we've mentioned, how much sort of things have just changed over recent weeks. It feels sort of dangerous to predict anything, doesn't it, largely? But doubtless we'll end up making predictions anyway. So some of the other things we're looking at. This is kind of Ben's neck of the woods. This, but Gateshead got a sort of solid result really against Wrexham, a 1-1 draw. But obviously the nature of how it came about, with Wrexham equalising in the 95th minute, sort of mean, obviously, I suppose it shows just how sort of important the context of a result is. But what's your feelings around that, having obviously followed Gateshead for this season?
Well, I'm following Dominic Sker on Twitter. He's like Gateshead's media manager, and he was the one that got us into the press box, and he was saying that I think it was what was it? It was like if we've conceded in last minute goals against like top sides, and
It'd be third.
yeah, and I was like bloody hell, like
Yeah.
it wasn't
It really
it's
puts
a bit
all
of a shock.
it just puts all into context, doesn't it, with them?
I mean, if you look at how tight that is, that's like
Mm.
4 points, but
It
it's
goes back to what I was saying though, Ben. Like,
Mhm.
they're a side like underneath Salford, sides where they just shoot themselves in the foot, though, just conceding sloppy goals.
Well, the thing is, they're selling their best players. They've got rid of Fraser Kurt as well, he was one of the better centre halves as well, and there seems to be a bit mishy-mashy things going on with the owner. I don't really know full details, so I don't really want to go into it that much. But there's a bit of fan dissatisfaction, and you can tell it's with the players and the staff. It seems to run through the club, and it's a bit poisonous. And I'm a bit worried for the club. And Ross Gregor was saying on Twitter yesterday, from GPI Media, that he was saying that Gateshead could well and truly vanish if people aren't careful and they don't get enough help from the FA. So I think it's such a distraction. So I think they've done extremely well despite losing all these players and despite the transfer embargo and despite ownership and things like that, just to stay in contention, really.
Yeah, they've definitely. When you look at their league position, you wouldn't look at that and think there are issues behind the scenes, would you? Because of, I mean, they're obviously sort of making the most of sort of what is obviously behind the scenes quite a tricky situation in some ways at present, but yeah. So Gateshead are looking alongside the likes of Sutton, and you could even include Ebbsfleet in there as well, although they're slightly further back points wise on 52 and 10th place, but they are looking very much like a playoff push could be on the cards. Just one place outside them in 8th, so that Wrexham couldn't lose top spot this weekend because of Solihull Moore's almost said invasion there, involvement in the FA Trophy, but it could prove a valuable point for them nonetheless. And obviously it's an encouraging sign when they're getting late goals like that, because it shows sort of the grit, the determination sort of behind their promotion push.
Yeah.
So sort of just looking sort of to round off on the National League front, looking sort of slightly further down the table, we sort of we're going to probably have a look at sort of more mid-table and the likes of Hartlepool in a moment, because of a certain goal that was scored over the course of the weekend. And apologies to a couple of Hartlepool fans who I know for bringing that up again in advance. But
Sorry, they got Fraser Kerr now.
looking at the relegation battle, obviously we've got Braintree, Maidstone, Aldershot and Hampton Waterlooville in the relegation places at the moment. What are our thoughts on sort of relegation battle? We've got Dover, Barnet, Bournemouth and Chesterfield sort of in the 4 places above them. What are we thinking in terms of sort of who's looking good for escaping and who sort of not looking so promising?
Yeah, if it seems like all the sides at the bottom, if one side's doing bad, all of them are doing bad. If one side's getting some wins, everyone's getting wins. We're talking about a couple of podcasts ago with Braintree getting a couple of wins, bottom of the table. A few good wins for them, but is it really going to benefit them? I don't know. I do see Braintree and Maidstone going down. Simple as that, really. People saying Barnet to threat to go down. I don't think they are. I see how many games have gone in hand. I don't think Barnet to threat at all.
I don't think Chesterfield are now, because they've got a goal scorer.
Chesterfield definitely not. They've made some good signings. They've got a new manager in. If anything, I think I said it last week, I'll say it again though. Chesterfield, in my opinion, good pick to get promoted next season.
I know.
Yeah,
I said that.
3 wins in the last 4 for Chesterfield by the looks of it, so they do seem to be they're climbing, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd say as it is at the moment, that could be how it ends for the relegation places.
Yeah, Braintree and Maidstone seem slightly sort of not cut adrift as such, but obviously there's a 7 and 6 point gap there. So yeah, they're the ones in need of a bit more of a boost over the next few weeks. So we'll move on now to see them briefly. So that's sort of my area. We're just going to touch on it briefly. They've been on a decent run over recent weeks. Had 3 very positive results against sides in the top 5 in the table, and they played Hebburn on Tuesday night, who moved up to 5th off the back of the game because Hebburn came out 3-1 winners, and it was an excellent game, about as good a game as I can remember so far this season, and but in the end it was decided in the second half. It was 0-0 at half time. All goals came in the second half, yeah, the man who decided it really for Hebburn was Jack Robson, who we're going to have a bit more of a look at next week, because of sort of his background and some of his experiences over recent years. But he's 18, isn't he?
He'll be 19, I think.
19.
It's a good story though.
Yeah. So
Nice guy as well.
yeah. So Ben has a personal connection on this front, which again we're going to touch on a bit more next week. But you knew him basically in brief. You knew him from school, didn't you?
Yeah, through primary school and then through secondary as well. Jake's just pulling really stupid faces.
Football friends, eh?
No, because he absolutely destroyed us every single week he played. Shut up.
We're
Yeah.
gonna get copyrighted off him.
I know. Yeah, so I think we'll have a bit look at that more like next week. Hopefully when Harvey's actually back.
Yeah.
Currently out, we've forgot to mention.
Harvey come the anchor and the ship.
I think he'll be
yeah.
host next week. It depends. We'll flip
Yeah, he
a coin.
probably will be.
He'll be
Full
he'll be back
circle to
very
Harvey
soon.
Hinkler.
Indeed, yes. Harvey is, I think, in the vicinity this week.
Hopefully.
So there's a small chance he might make an appearance this week, but if not, he'll definitally be back.
He's done a better job than what
alongside
Ben
us
did
next
last week. Could Ben's efforts were pitiful.
That was just the quiz.
Blame not on them. No, I'm talking about last week.
Oh,
Ben
right.
Bobler took to my masterclass, my hosting masterclass.
I got an interview with Steve Rigg.
No. You
Ball.
no, because we've heard on Tuesdays as Neil saying how if you do broadcast in year 3, they've had people from Sky and that come in and give these masterclasses. I could have gave you a host of masterclass last week if you came.
That was my fault. I brought I helped the radio station by bringing an interview, so I brought my wealth of experience.
And I helped bring charisma
Just in general.
in general. Pure essence.
Well, as much as I'd like to contribute to the charisma discussion, well, yeah, I suppose you could say this is me stamping down in the hosting position, but we're diplomatic in this environment. So yeah, so just to sort of summarise that game Tuesday, Dib Fuller put Heaven in front 58th minute, converting a rebound after Jack Robson had cut in and hit the post, and that was only a minute after Dib Fuller had come on as well. Joe Hale then equalised for Seaham a couple of minutes later, but Robson then really took hold of the game in the final few minutes. He cut in from the left and just drove one top right corner in the 72nd minute. It was a superb goal. I'd highly recommend trying to find it on Twitter or YouTube or wherever in the coming days, because it really was impressive, and he made it look very easy as well. And then he set up Lewis Suddick in the 84th minute to put the seal on the result. But it was a good game, and Seaham, even though they're sort of looking, obviously that brought to an end their 3-game winning run, things are still looking up for them, and they're on the whole moving up the table in recent weeks. So I'm hoping we'll be able to carry that on at the weekend. So moving on now we're moving back to that Hartlepool topic we touched on earlier, which was a very impressive goal scored against them.
It's actually my game of the week. Sorry, guys. I thought I'd ruin it.
Well, that leads in very
Segue and a half,
nicely,
that.
I know.
and actually that
You can give you a
saved
piece
me
on
as
the
well,
Hartlepool
because
saga and tell us about the game.
Should I? Well, I think I will. I just need to find.
should we go get game of the week now? Because I had actually forgotten to
Segue
include
into
it.
the Hartlepool saga
I was.
game of the week.
It was sort of deliberate,
Ruined all the suspense.
but
See, James scored for Hartlepool.
I know. Wait, no, his name's Liam Noble, which is why Harvey initially called you that. I think he thought non-league. There's a Liam, and now there's a James, mixed together.
Mind-blowing.
Anyhow,
I'm happy to be called a footballer.
I think next season Hartlepool actually might have a chance of going up. They've got a strong team and I think strong fan base and things like that.
Lies.
Anyhow, I'm moving on. Yeah, I think the goal itself was just from Coulson, where he just flicked it over with his heel and then volleyed. That was worthy of the match itself, really.
Pure class.
And it was actually one of the top goals to go in games, 2-1 in the weekend. So I mean, probably one of the more eventful games. It wasn't too much from to choose this week. Usually there is. I mean, there's a shock, but we'll move on to Drake.
Yeah, so my game of the week comes from Salford's slump, getting deeper and deeper, digging that hole for them. 2-0 home loss to Eastleigh. Eastleigh leapfrogged them, and this, as James has said prior, a brace in this game from what I'll get on to. My player of the week, Paul McCullum, not Ben's player of the week. My player of the week. He's a player I've talked about. I remember the first podcast I hosted before Christmas. I bigged him up there. He's a player I don't think, because Eastleigh aren't top 3, they don't get enough credit. Them and Paul McCullum, I don't think he gets enough credit compared to other strikers in the league, like Danny Rowe, for example.
He's actually the second top goal scorer now.
Second top goal scorer, 21 goals, I do believe.
Correct.
It'd be interesting to see if they don't get promoted. Is he going to move? Interesting debate to have. I don't think so, because sides tend to go for the cherry picking from League 2, League 1 sides. But it was a solid game. Interesting angle from it. It was just Salford slump. Is Alexander going to get the sack? It'll be interesting to see. But yeah.
Yeah, it's it has been an interesting weekend, as we've said, and yeah, that goal by Luke Coulson was really impressive. Bergkamp-esque, would you say?
It was
Yeah.
very Bergkamp-esque. I couldn't think of a word to actually describe, but that's good.
Give me goosebumps, and
I was about to say might have induced flashbacks on both fronts.
Yeah, against Newcastle.
Yeah.
Every Newcastle supporter says that's a fluke.
Yeah.
if anyone
Yeah,
knows Dennis Bergkamp, everyone knows that's not a fluke.
Indeed, I suppose only the man himself knows, but
Flying, but he threw that one into the net.
that's very nicely
Flew
put.
past the defender.
And yeah, although this Coulson one, it did. I don't think there's any doubt really that he meant to do what he did, because it was
Magical.
it looked very much sort of premeditated and very coolly executed too. So so now we're gonna move on to the quiz.
Wait, have you got player of the week?
Oh, we missed a player of the week.
I've stayed my player of the week, Paul McCullum.
Oh yeah, you did. Right, I
Yeah,
haven't.
my
I've missed
piece.
Ben's player of the
But
week.
Ben's last minute waffle
w-
after he tried to claim Paul McCullum as his. So Ben, who is your player of the week?
Actually, well, it's a player of 2 weeks. I'm gonna
Oh, come on, you can't.
No.
Bend to the rules.
say.
go on.
I'll bend it a bit. He
Go on.
still scored. Steve Rigg, because scored without in 19 games he didn't score, and then he's left as the only choice up
Your
front.
friend Steve Rigg, who you interviewed.
It's not right. It's not my friend.
Who's Steve?
Everyone I know doesn't mean like I don't
Who
know.
you interviewed from?
Right, okay. Anyways. Yeah, I mean, after 19 games without scoring, they won the penalty. And, I think there's a lot of pressure on him now to score goals, especially without that run. There was high amounts on that game to win. And to score the first goal of the game, it relieves the pressure on the team and for him. And then he got his second. And then this week he scored against Wrexham as well, so he's got 3 in 2 games, which is without scoring in 19 games, then becoming the only striker at the club, that's good for dealing with pressure. So it's my play of 2 weeks, technically.
Both excellent choices. Jake is currently.
I think he's listening to a voicemail.
So yes. So now we'll move on to the quiz. That's quite a convenient delay actually, because I'm still working on this particular quiz. It's still very much in the works.
I've got a call from work. I'm not sure if it was meant for me. Talk about I'll be in the office all day. I know of a Gemma Sainsbury's, by the way. Don't think it was meant for me because this is twice.
Shout out to Gemma Sainsbury's.
Shout out to Gemma Sainsbury's. Yeah, but I've just been called. Check the voicemail. It looks like wrong number because it happened before. I don't know whether.
Did they just call all their employees and just hope that's the right one?
Apparently, I know you could say it's alphabetical, but it goes in order of just class and ability.
Oh, it's not because his second name's Adams.
You know, I'm not going to argue with that.
If you see the way I flip those chicks, that would make you.
Well,
what you on about?
I have no doubt you're regularly up for Employee of the Month as well, Jake.
Yeah.
So, this quiz then. I'm going to apologise in advance because it is very much sort of off the cuff, and
I think all of our quizzes are. I can't even say anything because mine was just awful.
Well, wait until you've heard this one. Then we can decide.
Mine was
where
factually
it stands.
wrong.
Well,
from my point of view.
That keeps it interesting, though, doesn't it? If nothing else.
I'll be one by default.
Yeah, you just won just to get it over. Just pick to win.
It was like an hour long.
It was a shambles. Yeah. Let's not get into
Let's
that.
move away from refereeing controversy.
Let's focus on James and his fabulous quiz. I'm sure it'll be.
Right.
Are we gonna have our signature noises or not?
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. So the first question of said quiz is and we've not got the league table up on the computer, so no fears. Well, we don't want it up.
Oh, wait, I'll get rid of the tab then, because I don't want any of us to cheat.
I don't think.
I'm gonna get rid of all of these.
I don't think we is the question. I think it's you who's.
I'm not. I never cheat.
You're a monster.
Someone gave me answers for an exam once, and I actually wrote the wrong answer just so I didn't cheat. How stupid is that?
Mine. We've just found some leaked files there from our predecessors, Richard and Jackson.
Twitter
from their podcast Touch Gloves. It's quite a bland plan, that isn't it?
We've got 4 things. I mean,
let's count the words.
We have like
3,
2 pages of notes.
5,
to be fair,
6, 8 words for their plan.
I did accidentally make an appearance on their podcast before.
Let's not talk about that, 'cause that includes some explicits, didn't it?
Yeah, but that was by accident. I hope they cut that out, but I don't know if they did.
They won't.
Probably not. I don't think
Go
people
away
like.
for a long time.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway, sorry, James.
Carry on.
No, it's fine. This is all prep time for me, so I appreciate it. Right. So first question, which is purely maths based, and has a bonus point potentially. In fact, do we want to allocate noises? We haven't allocated noises for sort of buzzing in to answer the questions. Do we want to do that this
Go on,
week?
Ben.
Mine's no.
What?
Have you ever heard Voldemort when he makes that strange?
That
I'm
is
gonna go
beautiful.
for Velvet Thunder.
I like that. Right.
So, yes. How do I follow that? So, which team? And the bonus point will be for how many goals they've conceded. But which team has conceded the lowest number of goals in the National League this season?
Velvet Thunder.
Jake.
Solihull Moors?
Incorrect.
No. I'm forgetting my nose now. I'm gonna go Wrexham.
Incorrect.
Wait, do we get a clue after the first round, or should we just?
Yes, I can give you. Oh, do you want to have one more guess each, and then
Yeah,
so I'll open the floor
anyway.
up again.
It's fine.
Nah, filed.
No.
Damn it.
Incorrect.
Because it's Leighton Orient.
It is.
Damn it.
How many goals for a bonus point?
They've conceded 23.
Not quite.
Oh, just not confident.
Wait, is this a guess for me or not?
You can.
I'm gonna have one. Do you ready if I have one
Yeah,
guess?
go on,
I don't
go
give
on.
Kevin for
Get
it.
in a half.
Nah.
If you get this right.
19.
No.
Oh.
I'll give half a bonus point to Jake because he was very close. It was 24.
Ooh,
Oh.
I had 24 on the tip of my tongue. I changed it to 23.
So
I did change it.
Jake is 1.5 nil up, which is probably a
Beautiful.
sentence I'm never going to say again in my life.
I just hope I score now.
Now then, question number 2. David Beckham recently bought a stake in Salford City.
I'm going to steak a chicken.
Not that kind of steak.
As
But,
James munches.
so that
chicken.
that took the sort of overall stake that the class of '92 held in the club to over 50%. But how big is Beckham's stake?
Nah. 20?
No,
Velvet Thunder. 35.
no.
What's the closest?
Ben is closest.
Velvet Thunder. 15.
Not quite.
Nah. 25.
Not quite.
Good, it's 10%, that's why.
Nah. 22.
Sadly not. Jake did have it. I'm gonna give Ben half a point because he was closest. It was 10%, as Jake said. For another bonus point, and this isn't the toughest of questions, but can either of you name sort of all the stakeholders from the class of '92?
Nah. Phil Neville, David Beckham, Scholes, and Gary Neville?
Lies, I can name the final one. Give it to me.
Almost.
With final 2, isn't he? Giggs. And Butt.
Correct. Right,
I'll still a half. Thank you very much.
I'll give you.
We just split points out.
I'll give you half a point each because that was sort of a joint effort.
Yeah.
So
Oh my goodness.
That's
so
my
we're
pick.
now, I believe, on are we 2.5?
That didn't happen.
Yeah. 2.5 to 1, I think.
Or is it 2? It's
No,
2 to
it's
2-1.
It's
I
2
think.
to half a point.
No, 2 to 1.
I'm not having this.
Right.
He's the
then.
referee.
Now then, decisive
Oh, nice, I'm
question.
precious.
It's probably going to be another maths-based one.
Right, let's go.
Which side? So contrasting the first question, which side have scored the highest number of goals in the National League this season?
Nah.
And for a
sorry.
bonus point, how many?
Nah.
Easy this. If you don't get this,
Leighton
you're
Orient.
fraud. Conceded
No.
the highest, man.
No, scored the highest.
Oh,
Go on then. I'm out for this
Thunder.
official one.
It's because the answer is
Oh, I think it might be. Sorry.
Wrexham.
No,
Oh, nah.
No.
Filed.
no.
Oh, no, it's not.
Jake, do you want to have one more go?
I'm correct with this one because Solihull moves.
No. It is Salford on.
Damn it, I was going to say that.
I
But
won't reveal it for 2 points, so it could prove potentially decisive. How many goals? And I'll let you both have a guess. And if you get it spot on, it will be for 2 points. If you're closest, then I'll give you 1.
I'm gonna go with 52.
nah, he didn't make a noise. 47.
Ooh.
Jake is closest.
What was it?
58 there total.
Wow.
So
That's a lot.
that's
goals.
an impressive total for this stage of the season. They've also conceded 38, but that's not bad in the context of the league. So yes. So Jake is the
Right.
quiz
Came
victor
close
this
in the
week.
middle of this disgrace.
By 3 points to 1.
I'll let him. Sorry. Possibly.
Harvey
because
has
I'm
made a
bit
guest
useless.
appearance on a through phone call.
Yes, Harvey as well. I don't think.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still recording. Sorry.
Podcast
It's alright,
is-
mate.
is-
You can
is
make a
fine,
guest
thank you,
appearance
thank
right
you.
now.
Put Harvey on speaker, and a
Two-
guest appearance can be made.
2 seconds. Say hello, Harvey.
What were we discussing, lads?
What we discussed? Oh, we're doing the quiz. I lost. I think. Is that the final question?
Makeshift quiz. Yeah.
Makeshift quiz.
Oh, go on. Chuck us a question.
Oh blimey.
Oh yeah, because he doesn't know the answers, does he?
I'll come up with another one quickly. Okay, I'll go really random. Who's 12th, Harvey?
Who's 12th at the moment? Hold on, because I know Hartlepool were 13th, so I'm gonna
That's
go
great.
with Barrow.
He's got it.
Oh.
Spot on.
You know what? We
Even-
struggle. We
Even
struggle.
when I'm massively hungover, I still know.
You see, we struggled with the quiz, and we've been here, and like we've been doing research beforehand. Well, thank you for the appearance, Harvey. We'll see you very shortly once we're finished. Adios.
Yeah.
Bye.
There we go. So that was a very
We've been put to
very
shame.
brief, but very impressive guest appearance by Harvey, who will be back in the studio next week alongside us. So before we go, is there anything else we want to mention on the non-league front ahead of this weekend or in relation to last weekend, lads?
No, it's just all I can say is it's starting to separate a bit at the top. Teams falling off like Salford. It'll be interesting how the next few weeks play out.
Yeah, feels like the cream are sort of being separated out, aren't they? To
yeah.
sort of put one
The cream of the
food
crop are going
based
to the
slant
top.
on it.
That was lovely. I like that line. I'm sorry.
But yeah, so it's hotting up at sort of all over the place in the table really, and yeah, so we've got obviously more National League fixtures this weekend, and I'll be seeing myself. What will you guys be up to this weekend? Working.
I don't know what I'm doing this weekend, because Gates is away in Newcastle.
More footballers, aren't you?
What?
Interview more footballers, are you?
Probably not. I think I'm just seeing my girlfriend this weekend.
Ooh.
I know. Happy days.
Well, I'm sure there'll be enthralling weekends in various ways. But that's it from us for this week. So we'll be back again next week with the 9th edition of the Non-League Podcast. So hope you'll have a brilliant weekend and a brilliant start to next week. And you'll hear from us again soon.
Sure will.
Ta-ra.